This is Manu. I'm the Chief Business Officer at KNOLSKAPE, and I head the business for India and Middle East. And I welcome you all to another episode of The Learning Curve powered by KNOLSKAPE. The Learning Curve is where we host thought leaders, CXOs, business leaders, and deep dive into understanding the definition of being future ready at work. What does future ready mean for different organizations? What does future ready mean for a leader and who's leading the team or who's leading businesses across? And also this conversation about what's impacting the three W's, which is the work, the worker, and the workplace. Now, before I reveal the name of our superstar guest who we have today, I'm going to tell you a bit about him, and everything that I tell you about him actually falls into one person, and which is something absolutely incredible. He's an award-winning business strategist of international acclaim. He has 4 postgraduate degrees. He's an author of multiple bestsellers. He has exited 5 successful businesses. Marshall Goldsmith calls him the #1 executive coach in UAE oblique Middle East. And he's a global speaker, a TEDx speaker, a leadership coach working across the globe with multiple CXOs, business heads, and doing some incredible work. And I'm super excited to welcome Dr. Corrie to the Learning Curve. And good to have you with us, Dr. Corrie. And is there anything that I missed about the incredible list and the incredible ingredients that
It
come in?
sounds like a lot when you say it like that, Manu. Like it sounds like a lot, but honestly, yeah, that's one of the comments I get a lot on my LinkedIn page. It's my LinkedIn. It takes about a week to read, and so the comment I get most is not why did you do it, because I do a lot of really weird things, but how. People ask me how did I do all of that and raise 5 kids, you know, so.
Yes, that's another thing which I would need to add, that raising 5 kids is actually a job by itself. So
yeah,
absolutely super excited to have you with us, Dr.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Sure. And, you know, as part of the tradition when we start a podcast, you know, just to make it more interesting and exciting, I'm going to have a quick rapid fire with you. It's going to be about 4 to 5 questions getting thrown at you, and just to understand and know you a little better.
Sure. Go ahead.
The first question, Dr. Corrie, that comes to you is, what is the toughest leadership lesson that you've learned over the years and having worked with so many leaders across the globe?
Yeah, the toughest leadership lesson that I've learned is that there's no such thing as the perfect leader. None of us are prophets, none of us are gods, and we keep trying to fix our weaknesses, but the weaknesses are what define us as not God, right? And so if we keep looking at trying to close the gap between our weaknesses and our strengths, then it has to start with the assumption that with enough time and effort, I could become God.
Right.
So giving into that humility and just recognizing that, okay, I'm actually probably not going to fix my weaknesses. And to do so is futile. To work on that is futile. But so perhaps the biggest leadership lesson I've learned alongside that is that the best, most omni-talented leadership decisions that I've ever made have been with people whose strengths balance my weaknesses, and I trust them.
Super. So that's my lesson and my takeaway for that. Leaders are not God, and they are as human as anyone else.
That's right.
And Dr. Corrie, in your books are bestsellers. And out of 2 books that I've read, and the last one, actually, I was lucky enough to get a handwritten note from you, which is Love at Work.
Good.
Love at Work and Spartan CEO, which book was harder to write? Because both of them are brilliant books, and I just love them.
Yeah, look, both of them are products of my irritation with the world. All of my books are products of my irritation with the world. I become annoyed with something, and then I'm like, oh, I think I can make it better. So Spartan CEO was actually, I was irritated with my clients. I had amazing CEO executive coaching clients who were like really high performing and on the ball, right? And I had really mediocre CEO clients, and it didn't seem to matter what size of company it was or how many employees they had or how much money they were dealing with. Like, no, you can have really high performers in the C-suite, really low performers in the C-suite. And so I was just looking for, if it's not the job title and it's not the size of the oak desk, what are the differentiators, right? So I found those 6 pillars. as major differentiators between high performing and low performing executives. But I think honestly, Love at Work was harder to write because it's so delicate. But I don't know why it's delicate. Okay, so love is not just it's not just a spiritual concept, right? It's an evolutionary psychological best practice for survival that bonds humans together. All of
Right.
our ancestors earned us the right to be born by knowing who they loved and knowing who they didn't, right? It's a shortcut for I'll provide for you and protect you when you're not looking, respect, shared values, psychological safety, critical feedback, all of those things help support affect. It's all shortcutted in this one concept that we call love. And we've kicked that out of the place where we spend the most time with other humans, and that didn't make sense to me. So I think the research behind why we took something so good as a human best practice for survival and intentionally exiled it from the place where we spend the most time with other humans, that was a daunting task. That was challenging.
Super. And we're going to deep dive into the book as we move along, as part of our podcast. My next
Yeah.
question, Dr. Corey, and I've been doing a little bit of research about you. If you had to pick one, something that you do out of work, which is you do a lot of skydiving, you do
Yeah.
biking, you do reading.
Yeah.
What's your most favorite thing in terms of which helps you just get away from the mundane stuff or the daily stuff that you do?
I think running the Spartan trifecta in a
Uh,
weekend, because I run all three races in 2 days, right? I'll run the Beast on Saturday and then the Super and the Sprint back to back on Sunday. So for those of you who don't know, that's about 45 to 50 kilometers of obstacle course running over a
wow.
course of 2 days. All right. And it's all off road. It's over rocks, through sand, carrying buckets of rocks uphill, climbing over walls and stuff like that. It's challenging. But I think what's most rewarding about it is at the end, I realize, okay, actually, I'm still an apex predator. I'm the product of 10,000 generations of successful survival and adaptation. My body is capable of much more than I put it through on a daily basis. My mind is capable of much more than I put it through on a daily basis. And running those obstacle course races really gives me a chance to test both.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's
Uh,
a capacity test just to see like if I'm the kind of person that I want to hang out with during an apocalypse. That's my benchmark.
That's amazing. Absolutely, Dory. And my last question, Dr. Corey, is part of the rapid fire is this whole conversation about AI taking away jobs. And how do you think your conversation with leaders, again, coming back, how are leaders taking this technology element coming into leadership? Are they scared? Are they skeptical? How are they getting ready for this?
The only those who are ignorant are scared. Yeah. Those who understand artificial intelligence and those who understand actually the development of technology and the development of humanity over the last 200 or 300 years. But people were saying this when we invented the loom, right? For
Yeah.
for making rugs and making textiles, where they were like, "Oh my goodness, the loom is there." And so there was a whole movement of people that were afraid that tailors and textile makers would be out of work because the loom was invented. Like, and it was the same with the printing press. It was the same. It's been the same with all major technology leaps. And yes, this is a major technology leap, and technology grows exponentially while humanity grows the evolution like incrementally. So there is a larger gap between the technology and the humanity now than there has been before, but we're finding better ways to use it. And I don't think those who know a lot about AI are as afraid for the human race as those who don't. So yeah, I'm not concerned. I think this is an amazing opportunity for us to just have
Right.
access to a new kind of technology that's going to help us in ways that we couldn't have possibly imagined. And it's not very different from air travel.
Right, absolutely. And I think end of the day, AI or Gen AI, that every conversation is not completed without is actually how do you enhance the productivity rather than taking it as something which is going to take away your jobs. It's more about enhancing your
Yeah.
productivity as well.
There's some confusion about generative AI and what it's actually doing. The AI that we have access to now is not really actually generative.
Yeah.
It's synthesizing. So it takes, and it doesn't have access to new vocabulary. It doesn't have access to new ideas. It only takes the ideas that have already been had and it synthesizes them. And it doesn't actually comprehend the ideas that it's synthesizing. What it's looking for is a pattern of ones and zeros that you will give it a thumbs up. right?
Right.
And if it creates the right pattern of ones and zeros and you go like this, then it's happy, it's met its goal, but it doesn't actually comprehend the meaning of the ones and zeros that it's writing down. So it's just a puzzle maker. It's not really it's not really rational yet.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And Dr. Corey, I mean, as part of our conversations that we have with thought leaders and business heads across, there's this whole concept of what future readiness actually means, and also about
Yeah.
the impact or the disruption that, we are talking about the three W's, which is the work, worker, and the workplace. And as part of your
Mm,
coaching and as part of your research, as you working again very closely with a lot of CXOs, how do you see this
yeah.
changing, and what do you how do you see this impacting the workplace, say in the next 6 months, 8 months, 1 year, 2 years? What do you think about the future readiness at work right now?
Yeah, look for in the executive class, future readiness really means, like I said, the ability to recognize that we're not prophets and we're not gods. There, you're not going to be perfect.
Right.
It was interesting. I was doing an offsite for the group CXOs of a major bank here in the region. I won't name the bank, but there was 17 CXOs, right? CEOs and the GCHRO and the GCFO and all of those, they were all in the room. And I said to them, look, how many of you have made a significant error in the last month and then informed the rest of your team? Nobody puts up their hand, okay? So then I say, look, if you're not running fast enough to fall down from time to time, then probably it's because you're not trying hard enough to be on my team, right? You're not running fast enough if you're not falling down from time to time. Or you're not making any mistakes at all. If you're running fast enough to be on my team and you're not making any mistakes at all, you must be a god, right? Then we'll have to change the nature of our relationship. I'm going to have to worship you. It's going to be really awkward for everybody. But if you're not a god and you are running fast enough and you're not reporting your mistakes to us, then you're just lying. Then you're deceiving your team into thinking that you're not making mistakes. Meanwhile, you're robbing all of us of the learning opportunity that could come from that critical error. And if you're truly
Right.
not making any mistakes, then you're not running fast enough, right? So either you're a god or a liar. And these kind of are the options right now. If or you can be honest with us and just share your mistakes with us so that we can all learn from that opportunity. We can all get better and faster and stronger. So recognizing that in leadership culture in major organizations, traditional organizations, that is a huge step forward for
Right.
executives who have traditionally been pressured to present themselves as flawless. That kind of
Right.
pressure is it's insane. It's insane. Our executives are expected to present themselves day after day as making critical decisions, $10 million, 1,000 families at a time, flawlessly. And it's like,
Right.
and that can't be done, especially if you want them to be innovative and disruptive and, and to really like move with the market. If they're going to be responsive and they're going to lead the market, they're going to make mistakes. And those
Right.
mistakes are going to be really expensive. And they should be publicized, at least internally, to the rest of the executive class so that we can learn from them. So that's number one. And second, and kind of on top of that, is a continuous learning attitude. But the challenge at the executive class now is that there's nothing on the shelf that will help them, and it doesn't matter what the brand is, INSEAD, Informa, Cambridge, Stanford, Oxford, they're all really, really good institutions for learning management up to a senior management level. But at an executive level, and especially at the global level of play, there's nothing that you can do off the shelf in a packaged learning environment that will really, really help. And so what we're finding is that there's a much greater pivot toward executive coaching because executives are now seeing themselves as Olympic athletes, right? At the Olympic
Right.
level, Olympic athletes don't go to camp. They don't go to soccer camp. They don't go to cricket camp, right? They
Right.
go to an Olympic coach, and the Olympic coach says, okay, listen, we're going to try and do something that by definition has never been done by any human before. That's the nature of a world record. So in every major human domain, whether we're talking about the best violin players in the world, the best surgeons in the world, the best athletes in the world, and the best business leaders in the world, they're pivoting toward executive coaching as continuous learning and development initiative.
Sure. And I'm glad you touched the topic of that whole process of leaders not being vulnerable. And vulnerability is a great conversation where leaders need to reveal their emotions, Do you see that anywhere? And this is again a bit of controversy around this, where they say if you reveal yourself or are
Mm.
vulnerable, it's also a sign of weakness for a leader. Would you say
Mm.
that you don't come across as someone who's strong, someone who is has the ability to take decisions or take the entire team forward because everyone looks up to you, and if you're somewhere vulnerable and you're weeping or
Mm.
crying or would you agree with that partially or
I think, look, I think context is really important.
yeah,
Okay,
right, right,
so let's put this into context, all right? Let's talk about the Navy SEALs. The U.S. Navy SEALs are arguably the most elite male fighting force on the planet, and nobody would ever say that those guys are not men. They're not tough guys. They're not leaders. Okay, nobody would
right,
ever say that to them. They cry.
right,
They don't cry in front of the camera. They don't cry in front of the enemy, and they don't cry in front of the army. They cry in front of each other. They are
right,
vulnerable within the unit.
within
That's
the
it. So
yes,
it is important. It really is important for executive committee members, CFOs, CHROs, CEOs, CMOs to really view themselves, that executive committee, as a unit. Say, okay, yeah, look, we can't be vulnerable in front of the entire company, right? 10,000 people see you with your heart open on the table, then they're gonna freak out. They'll be like, oh my goodness, our leader is broken. How are they going to provide leadership? But within that team, within that context, yeah, that vulnerability is what separates you from God. So and those are the people that are supposed to be able to help you. That's your team, that's your unit,
right,
right? And so even in that kind of context, you have like the Navy SEAL unit context, you have these men who have been training for years, and they're very tough, they're very fast, they're very smart, they speak multiple languages, they've got so many skills, and they're like really hard as nails, and their hearts are open to each other, and they say to each other, I love you. And saying to each other, I love you, from a Navy SEALs perspective, means I'm going to throw my body onto a grenade just to make sure that it doesn't hit you. Okay.
right,
And they do that for each other because they know the other one would do that for them. And so there's that love. But even in that love, there is still structure. The lieutenant is still the captain of the unit. So when the
right.
lieutenant gives an order, everybody follows. That's it. So we have structure and hierarchy and love at the same time. And I think it's just a really beautiful metaphor for what is possible on executive committees in large organizations.
Sure. I absolutely love that example of the Navy SEALs, and it really relates in terms of what you mentioned about the right context being in place. And if you
Yeah.
need to reveal your emotion, it has to be within the group, which makes it even more better for the leader. I'm going to deviate a bit into one of your books, which is
Sure.
Business is Personal, where you've spoken about something quite similar, where leaders need to unlock the full potential of the
Yeah.
teams
That's
and
right.
foster a harmonious and a culture where there is conversations around fulfillment and everything that end of the day
Yes.
relates to the business growth or the goals that you're targeting. Can you reveal a bit more in terms of how can leaders unlock
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
potential of the teams? I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Absolutely. See, so many leaders are still trying to motivate their people with carrots and sticks. Okay, and if you use carrots and sticks, that's fine, but don't expect your people to behave differently than donkeys, because that's how you motivate a donkey. A donkey will just sit there unless there's a carrot or a stick. There has to be some sort of motivator,
Right.
and humans are very much the same. If they don't feel intrinsically motivated to do something, they'll just sit there unless there's a carrot or a stick. So if those are the only tools in your toolkit, don't be surprised if your people behave like donkeys, right? Now, if you're going to treat your people like apex predators, each and every one of your employees is the product of 10,000 successful generations of survival and adaptation. All of their ancestors earned them the right to be born by being selfish.
Right.
That's where their intrinsic motivation lies. It's not your
Yes.
carrot, it's not your stick. It's what's in here. Why are they there? They're not there because they like you. Okay?
Right.
As a leader, they might like you, but that's not why they get up in the morning. They're not there for the work. Nobody wakes up passionate about Excel spreadsheets or filling out forms or representing oil and gas companies. Like they don't wake up passionate about the what they're doing, and they don't wake up passionate about you necessarily. But what they're passionate about is their motivation for being there, which probably has nothing at all to do with the company, right? They have a career trajectory they're trying to build. They're trying to provide a good quality of life for their family. They want to provide education options for their kids that they didn't have access to. They want to retire at a reasonable age. Those things have nothing at all to do with the products and services of your company, and they don't have very little to do with your character as a leader. And that's what you need to tap into, because that is what earned them the right to be born. All of their ancestors thought exactly the same way. Now, very fortunately, we found out about 500,000 years ago that the most effective form of selfishness is together on teams,
Yeah.
right? If I was to hunt and gather all by myself, I could maybe survive for a little bit. My family might survive. But if I was to partner with another family, I can hunt and gather for that family. Their male can protect the women and the children. The women can divide the labor between food prep and child rearing. And then just like that, we have the division of labor, right? That's the first specialized division of labor. And that's the beginning of Adam Smith's thesis. So yeah, from about 500,000 years ago until now, we realized that it's actually much more efficient to be selfish on teams. And our teams used to be family, tribe, city, nation, empire. And now our teams, as of about the Industrial Revolution, which is like 350 years ago, now our teams are economic teams. We have business team, which means you don't have to play for the team that your father played for or your mother played for. You can play for a different team, and you can play a different sport, and you can play a different kind of place on that. And so now we don't have just 4 or 5 roles. We have tens of thousands of different roles. So we have a lot more opportunity now, but the rules by which we build those teams are still the same. We belong and we add value in exchange for a share of the resources.
Absolutely brilliant, Dr. Corrie. And I recall, when I was part of the session when we met in, in Abu Dhabi, and there's something you mentioned when you were on the stage, and I still recall that you spoke about all humans are selfish, but
Yes.
selfishness is the way to survival.
Yes.
What was the thought behind this? Because this was absolutely hard at hitting when you say
Yeah.
that humans are selfish. What's your take on this? I mean, in terms of what made you say this?
Because it's true. I mean,
Yeah,
psychologically, right? Psychologically, there's only a few things we absolutely must do, right? On the planet, we have to breathe, we have to eat, we have to sleep, we have to mate, and we have to add value to an economic team in exchange
right.
for shared resources, because you can't survive by yourself. Right? Even just the design of our species requires us to partner with somebody else just so that another layer of our species can be born and live. The gestation period for a human, by the way, is 10 years. It's not 9 months. So if you want another layer of humans, you're gonna have to work with somebody. So we've realized actually the most effective form of selfishness is together.
Yeah,
So everybody's selfish, but we just know that we're going to make more money together. We're going to live better quality lives together. And we've done that for the last 500,000 years. And you can really see that in the history of the last 250 to 500 years of technological advancements. All of us were born into a world of abundance that we didn't create for ourselves. Okay, the airplanes, you didn't invent them. The car you drive, you didn't invent that. You didn't invent the mobile phone that's in your pocket. You didn't design this camera that we're talking on now. You were born into that. You inherited that from a generation that came before you. And so that's sort of just how we exercise our selfishness in improving the quality of our own lives ends up as a byproduct for the next generation to improve the quality of life that they step into when they're born. So yes, everybody's selfish. That is true. But the most effective form of selfishness is together. Individualistic selfishness, strictly speaking, among humans is fatal.
right.
Because in history, if you were too individualistic and too selfish and you were taking from your tribe, guess what? The tribe's going to kick you out. And if the tribe kicks you out and they no longer share their food with you, chances are pretty good you're not going to make it. Your children will never be born.
Brilliant, Dr. Corey. And from being selfish and coming absolutely to the brilliant book that, is all out and, has such brilliant reviews coming in, which is Love at Work, which
Thank
talks
you.
about the final frontier of empathy and leadership. And it goes a step beyond empathy. What, the conversation that I had with you over lunch, where you're talking about, the concept of love in professional
Yeah.
realm, and also separating it from the romantic or the sexual connotations.
100%. Yeah, look,
Yeah. Go ahead.
The highest form of love, I would say, probably is for my children.
Yep.
Okay. I would sacrifice I would die for my kids.
Right.
And the lowest form, the most casual form is for like chocolate. I love chocolate. Okay. But it's like the most casual, and this is the most committed. I love my children and I love chocolate. Those are both true things. And neither end of the child chocolate spectrum has anything even remotely to do with romance or sex. So the
Right.
confusion that we have that all love is sexual or all love is romantic is absolutely stupid. It's completely untrue. And yet
Right.
because of that simple confusion, because we haven't separated the ideas. Look, we know you can have sex without love. We know you can have love without sex. So why are we confusing these two as though they're intrinsically connected? They're not at either end of the spectrum. So at work, we should be able to find something in the middle where we can express love in the place where we spend the most time with other humans, in the place where we add value in exchange for a share of the resources with our economic tribe. It makes sense to me, right? And love is a it's an evolutionary psychological shortcut for all of the things that you read about in all of the leadership books you've ever read, right? So this year you'll read 100 books about empathy and belonging and shared values and psychological safety, and the highest form of all of those things is love, but we don't write books about that. So I just thought, you know what? Let's flood the darkest corner of the company with the brightest light that we have and see what happens. What happens if we turn on the brightest light rather
Right.
than just kind of like a medium dim light, you know?
Yes, absolutely. And I absolutely recall by starting with the very basic step of when you send an email, why would you
Yeah.
write regards and why not just say love, Corey? Or
Oh, yeah,
you
I
know,
told you
I
about.
recall that.
Okay, so
And that's something that I've done myself. And I see
oh,
the
good.
reaction and the,
Good.
the response that I've come getting.
Yeah.
How did that idea come, Corey? And how are you,
I
again, going
when
back
I
to your
started
thought? Yes, go ahead.
when I started the research, I just thought, you know what? I want to try to insert maybe a little bit more love into all of my professional communications, right? We think of love as kind of is unprofessional. It's
Yep.
unprofessional. You're not supposed. Actually, I was raised really loving. I was raised in a loving home. My parents told me they loved me every day, which was really annoying as a child because my mom's like, "Oh, I love you," and my dad's like, "Oh, I love you, son," and like every day. And I'm like, "Dad, I'm almost 50 years old now. You have to stop at some point." But yeah, so I was raised in a really loving home. And then when I became an adult, I realized that the world wasn't supposed to be loving like that, right? Like I was going to have to spend half of my life in a job where I'm not supposed to express love for the people that I'm working with. And if I do actually love the people I'm working with, I should definitely not tell them because that's deeply unprofessional, right? So I shouldn't express it. And then eventually it got to the place where I was like, okay, this is just really silly. So I was doing the research for the book, and I just decided in some small way I want to insert a little bit more love into all of my professional communications. Email is the worst form of communication on the planet. And I think it was Bill Gates that said it first. It was in the 80s. He's like, it's one directional, it lacks all context, it's just words, right? And it's just the lowest form of communication. So I was like, if I can elevate the lowest form of communication just a little, then I'm going to do that. So arbitrarily on one day, I made a commitment. I'd made a commitment not to my staff, not to my customers, not to anyone else. I made a commitment to me. I was going to sign every single email from that day forward. Love, Corey. No more sincerely, no more best regards, no more warm wishes. And I did this to everybody. Okay, everyone, friends, strangers, customer service agents, clients, vendors, members of the royal family, ministers of government, everybody. Love, Corey. Okay, I've been doing this for 2 years now.
Yes. So,
And nobody seems to mind. Nobody has
right.
reported me to any HR departments that I'm aware of. So I think the experiment's a success. And I feel really comfortable inviting you and all of your people and all of your viewers to do exactly the same. Just sign off all of your emails, love. And what do you think is going to happen? Nothing. Nothing's going to happen.
Nothing. Yes.
What is all it's going to do is that at the end of your email, and even when I'm really, really angry, I'm angry writing to a customer service agent at my bank about some screwed up transaction or whatever. It's rah, rah, love, Corey, right? So at the very end of the email, there's this kind of little tag like, oh, okay, he's upset, but he's not really evil,
He's
right?
not.
And so if we, and I think maybe if a few thousand of us did it, it would be novel, but if a few million of us did it, it would be impactful. If we could get to the place where maybe 50 or 100 million people started doing this, then yeah, it might work its way into business psyche a little bit. And so
Right.
I encourage your people to just start signing off all of your emails with love. That's it.
Absolutely. And I've started doing that, Corey, and I see the difference in terms of when I talk to people, say, hey, you signed your email as Love Manu,
Yeah,
and
good.
something very different. I said, hey, the patent for this lies with someone in UAE, and the inspiration comes from Dr. Corey for that. And as part of the book, Corey, again, where you're talking about love at work, this
Yeah.
again is a stepping stone for changing culture. And
Mhm.
as part of your work with a lot of organizations and a lot of CXOs, again, can you
Yeah.
share with our audience, and we have a global audience right now, in terms of some of the solutions or best practices that you've successfully actually part of your coaching actually shared with the leaders in terms of overcoming cultural challenges or creating the right culture in an
Mhm.
organization?
Yeah, I think really what it is recognize first of all that each and every one of your employees doesn't have to be there. Nobody works for
Right.
you. Okay. People work with you, but ultimately they work for themselves. And as soon as some other better opportunity comes along, they'll go. And if you're being a jerk to them, they'll go sooner.
Right.
Okay. It won't take as much to bribe them out of your community and into some other community. So yeah, if you're not treating your people like apex predators, that's a big mistake. Now, if you are treating them like apex predators, then you're going to have to build connection with them because the people who behave the best are the ones that are going to be behaving really, really well in your direction, in the direction of the organization when they're not being managed. And how often are people actually being managed? Like 2%, 5% of the time maximum? The other 95% of the time, what are they doing? Well, they're apex predators. They're doing whatever they want.
Yes.
Okay. They're doing whatever is in their best interest. So
Right.
if they're not aligned to you from here, they're going to be using your resources, your name, they're going to be using the resources of the organization or the economic tribe to advance their own career, to advance themselves. But if they're aligned with you and they believe that you have their best interest at heart and you're trying to develop them and they feel developed and encouraged and acknowledged and rewarded by you, yeah, then they're going to be working with you and aligned with you when nobody's looking, which is 95% of the time. So the way we build that process up is we started with included. And I know there's a lot of talk about diversity and equity and inclusion these days, but inclusion really is level one in psychological safety. And then once you're in the door and you feel welcome, that doesn't mean you've said anything or contributed anything. So once you have to contribute, then once you contribute and you get a little echo back, that means you're heard. So inclusion is level one, heard is level two. Once you're heard, that doesn't mean you're understood. That just means you said something and somebody acknowledged that you communicated. So then you need to be understood. So if you hear an echo back that resembles what you've said or what you've meant, then you feel understood. Yeah, I feel understood, but that doesn't mean they've agreed with you, right? So I can give you advice and you can understand the advice, but if you don't take the advice, it's not valuable advice, right?
Right. Right.
So even after understood, if change happens as a result of what you've contributed, then you're valued, right? And if being valued happens over and over and over again in an organization where you're contributing and there's change, and then you're contributing, there's change, and then they're contributing to you and you change and you develop and you're growing and you're learning. So there's that reciprocal change of value, then you will feel loved. And this is undistinguishable from all concepts of love, that you will have greater trust, loyalty, respect for your team. You'll absorb more mistakes. You'll absorb more criticism or bad days because you'll recognize that your team is just a bunch of humans as well. And they're going to recognize that you're a human as well. So there's going to be a lot more buffering for moods and mistakes and errors and things like that. So yeah, actually just collaboration, trust, and creativity skyrockets when people feel loved, but you have to build that ladder from included to heard to understood to valued to get to that place where a human feels loved. And when a human feels loved, then there's really nothing that can stop them. I mean, if you just look at history, and you'll find out where you are now as a leader, right? Like humans will work very hard for a leader that they fear. Okay. They will in the short term. But now there are no slaves in our organizations. So it's very short term. The kind of drive that you're going to get from them is like a month, 2 months. And then guess what they're going to do? They're going to work on their CV and they're going to find another job. So no slavery means you can't just drive them with fear like some of your ancestors might have done. So fear
Yeah.
isn't a great motivator anymore. Now, fear drives short-term productivity. But
Right.
right, so a human will work very hard for a short period of time for a leader that they fear, but they will fight for with everything they've got for a leader that they love, and they will die for a leader that loves them back. That is
Right.
something we also learned from history, is that the highest levels of motivation, highest levels of productivity, the highest levels of loyalty, the highest levels of discretionary effort come from humans who not only love the leader that they're following, but believe that that leader loves them in return. That is
Right.
when you're going to get the greatest level of discretionary effort and human sacrifice and self-development. So if that's what you want during the other 95% of the time when you're not managing your people, guess what? You're going to have to connect.
Right. Right. Brilliant, Dr. Corey, and everything that you speak is actually a lesson based on, the incredible research and your
Yes.
conversations and your experience. And thank you for sharing that with us. I possibly have maybe just two quick questions before we
Sure.
wrap up. Again, it's going back to something that we are witnessing across, when I say across the geopolitical scene outside, when there are wars getting fought, which is having an impact on business. A lot of
Yeah.
leaders that we speak to are not able to give, the next 3 year vision of what business would look like, or next 5 year that was traditionally very common for all leaders to speak about. Uh, what do you think the leaders are grappling with in the new business dynamics, the external environment where there is always that fear of war, the economy going
Yeah.
down, things not moving well? That is
Yeah.
one part of my question. And the second part is, what advice would you give the leaders, and especially the CXOs or senior leaders in these
Yeah.
challenging times?
Yeah. So like, I think the biggest challenge that we face now are abundance challenges.
Yeah,
Remember that all of our ancestors earned us the right to be born through survival and adaptation.
right.
And our heads are full of tools that are designed to help us to survive in
Yeah,
a world that no longer exists, a world
right.
where, most of your decisions were based on scarcity and violence.
Yes.
Um, Most of our ancestors ate once a day, and you didn't get to choose what you ate. You ate whatever was convenient or ripe or whatever the hunters brought home for you, right? So you didn't get to choose. Now, the idea that you can eat 3 times a day, that's about 100 years old, in most of
Yeah.
the developed world. The idea that you can choose what you eat 3 times a day, it's about 30 years old. The idea that you can get it within 30 minutes, that's, you know, 10 years old. These are all very new things. We're not prepared for this level of convenience, right? We don't have tools for that. And comfort, we're not prepared for this level of comfort. The idea that you live in a secure society, that's new. Look, the things that are happening on the planet notwithstanding, we do still have war, but we are
Right.
even all of that notwithstanding, we are still in the most peaceful time in all of human history.
Right.
Relative to the way that our ancestors lived, we're not where we should be for sure, but we're definitely not where we were. We're living longer, we're healthier, we have more options for everything than our ancestors ever had. But they didn't give us tools for that. And complexity is probably the worst one. Most of our ancestors dealt with like maximum 150 relationships over the course of their lives. That's called Dunbar's number if you want to look that up. Um, they didn't deal with any more than 7 or 8 things on a checklist, and they didn't ever have to listen to more than 2 people talking at the same time. So your prefrontal cortex only developed 120 bits per second of processing power because, life was pretty simple up until the communication age, and that only started about 150 years ago. So yeah, look, the complexity of communications we have now, we're averaging about 4,500 human interactions every day, and executives are much more than that average. And that is not something that our brains are prepared for. We don't have tools for that. And so it's very easy for people to get overwhelmed. Every single time an executive phones me to tell me that they have had an anxiety attack or they are burning out, they are shocked. Every time. And I'm the one that gets the call because I'm the coach, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
they'll be on a plane to Thailand, or they'll be in the hospital or at home or something. And they'll say, "Hey, Dr. Corey, can I talk to you for a minute?" And I say, "Yeah." And they say, "Look, I'm having an anxiety attack, or I'm burning out, or something's wrong. I'm overwhelmed. I just need to talk it out." And I say, "Okay, so what's going on?" And they every single time they say, I never, I didn't see it coming. I didn't see it coming. It's just absolutely blindsiding me. And the reason that it's blindsiding you is because we don't have any red flags in our brains saying, "Hey, idiot, it's too complex. You can't take on more opportunity. You cannot mitigate more threat than what you're dealing with right now." That's it. That's the end of your processing power. There's no flag for that. So there's nobody waving the yellow flag in your brain saying, you know what, maybe you need to slow down a little bit. So I'm developing new tools for that. I'm writing a book for that in the next year. It's called Undistractable. But so time and task management, overwhelm management, and I think probably one of the biggest things that leaders can do now is just get used to the fact that there are many more good things to do every day than can ever be done.
Right.
You will leave excellent things undone on your task list, and there is no other way to do it. You cannot live in an age of abundance and actually take advantage of every opportunity and mitigate every threat. It's just not possible. This
Right.
is an abundant age. So we have to be at peace with the fact that the task list is never going to get done. And all the things left on the task list aren't bad things. They're good
Right.
things. They're great things, maybe even excellent things. But that's the tyranny of abundance, is that there are just many more excellent things to do than can ever be done. So that's number one. Be at peace with that. And if you need tools for time and task management that help you in an age of complexity, I've written them. Please come and find me. The other thing, and the biggest differentiator, and the reason why the majority of the CXOs in the FTSE 100 and the Fortune 500, those CXOs all have executive coaches, is because that's how you get to the top of your level of performance in any human game. Throughout all of human history, you'll always find the best warriors, the best writers, the best everything. They always have somebody next to them that's coaching them, that's mentoring them, that's saying, hey, if you do it this way, it's going to be a little bit better. If you do it this way, it's going to be a little bit better. There's no such thing as an Olympic athlete without an Olympic coach. Okay, that doesn't happen.
Right.
Actually, it happened twice. In France in 2024, there were two athletes that competed with the coaches. There was some sort of mix up, and those two athletes, their coaches were not able to come. The other 10,498 athletes all had coaches. That's how they get there. That's how they stay there. And that's why the majority of the CXOs and the big companies, they all have coaches. That's how you perform better at that level. You need somebody that can coach at that level. And you'll never find an Olympic coach asking their athlete, so what do you think you should do today? What exercises haven't you tried? That rhetorical, non-advisory coaching modality is really great at a mid-level or senior level management layer,
Right.
but at the executive level, it easily finds its limit. So you need an advisory coach. You need somebody. Look, your coach probably won't be able to play the game as well as you can, same like as an Olympic coach, but your coach should be able to coach you at your level. And there are
Yeah.
actually very few of those on the planet. So my next book, which is coming out in Q1 of next year, is called Chief Executive Coach. And it is about
Right.
the differentiators required in an executive coach between coaching C and C-1.
Sure. Actually, that was the next question I had, and possibly the last question in terms of what's next for Dr. Corey in terms of the amazing stuff that you're doing across. And I think most of our listeners would also be keen to understand, Dr. Corey, that you're, you know, zipping across the globe, you're
Yeah.
writing books, you're coaching senior
Yep.
folks. How do you manage your time, and how do you take care of your own research,
Yeah.
understanding what's working well, what's not working well, what are the trends, what are organizations speaking about? How do you manage all that? That's what's your secret sauce?
Yeah, so we're going to go back to the beginning of where we started the conversation.
Yes,
Look at
yes.
my LinkedIn page. You won't ask why, you'll
Yeah.
ask how.
How?
And
Yeah.
that is, yep, that is a legitimate question. I have the same 24 hours a day as
Yeah.
you do and Elon Musk, right? We all have the same 24 hours a day. It's how we use it that
Right.
differentiates us. And I am absolutely ruthless with my time. And I
Right.
still take 10 weeks of vacation every year. Okay.
Wow.
Because that's how I recharge. I still take
Yes.
10 weeks of vacation every year. I still have a weekend. I shut off everything probably around, most people know that I stop responding to messages around 7 p.m. every night. And yes, I write books, I coach executives, I do leadership training, I speak at conferences. And you think my life is less complex than yours? No, it's
No.
much more complex. But I
Yeah.
have tools that I've developed over the last 20 years that are way better than the Eisenhower matrix for understanding prioritization and managing your tasks and outsourcing a lot of the limitations here into digital platforms. So if you want to learn those tools, I have a protocol and I'm happy to coach. Otherwise, you'll just have to wait for the book. It'll come out at the end of next year.
Super. We look forward to the book and maybe a personally signed autograph, which maybe I'll travel down and take it
100%.
from
Yes,
you.
100%.
And thank you so much, Dr. Corrie. It's been
My
absolutely
pleasure.
an amazing conversation with you. And I'm sure our listeners are going to have a lot of takeaways, a lot of lessons in terms of how to deal with leadership, the future of work that you spoke of, culture readiness for a lot of organizations,
Thank
and
you, Manu.
also the impact of technology. And,
Yeah.
as part of the podcast that we do, the series of podcasts with KNOLSKAPE, we are also on a mission to help organizations and leaders become future ready. And we use a lot of tools like experiential learning, which is our methodology. And
Brilliant.
again, Dr. Corrie, thank you and look forward to meet you soon. Thank you so
My
much.
pleasure. My pleasure. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Manu.